many people would ask, what kind of impact did the protests have on decisions taken by government so far? And how much rights do citizens have to protest? More than any other thing, we want to also look deeper into the worldwide embrace of the protests right now. It's not limited to Bangladesh, to Kenya, to Nigeria. You're even looking at, I mean, the United Kingdom, which many people would not expect would witness this form of protest that we saw like about 10 days ago. Thankfully, I mean, Prime Minister seems to be on top of his game there. I want to take a look at this morning vis-a-vis your human right as a Nigerian.
Yeah, a fantastic conversation we're looking forward to having this morning on the show. Our very first guest will be Babatunde Erinjogunola, who is a policy and financial consultant. He joins us right about now. Virtually this morning. So good to have you on the show, Mr. Tunde. Yes, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you too. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's so good to have you talk to us this morning. A good place to start this conversation. Yes, we're looking at if protests against government policies are peculiar to Nigeria. Let's start by highlighting what policies the protesters were protesting against. It was termed End Bad Governance Protests. That is like the mother word, but in between all of that, you break it into pieces, you begin to see concerns around subsidy removal, you see concerns around inflation, concerns around floating of the naira, and many of that. Help us understand what you think the protesters were trying to address.
Thank you. To start with, let me congratulate all of us that business is back, just as Jay reported that there's traffic on our roads and all that. So we're grateful for that. Yeah, to come back to your question, is that protests all over the world is a common thing that people will react to government policy, public policy, and from data available, it's not peculiar to Nigeria. I think over 700 protests has taken place since 2017 on government, policy generally, and over 258 are just centered on economic policy, which is almost what we are faced with in Nigeria today. Yes, they call it bad governance, but all is informed by economic realities of our people. So it's not peculiar to us, and most of it even took place in Europe. Of the 258 protests since 2017 took place in Europe, involving Belgium, France, and Germany, and the rest of that. So it's a normal thing, as we have seen it. People are reacting appropriately to government policy, and that tells us again that our government is actually doing something, because if you don't do something, people will not react. So I think that communication is exchange is going on between the government and the government, so to speak.
All right, Mr. Erinjogunola, thank you for your opening remarks. But then, I don't know what you think. If you want to put into consideration some people in some quarters saying that might be Nigerians just wanted to be copycats, to really copy what other parts of the world was doing in the build-up to the protest that was announced and eventually carried out in the country. Did you think at that point in time that it was more about doing what others were doing, or Nigerians actually reacting to realities on ground?
Thank you. So you remember this, your program, something you invited, and I used the word copycat. Because for me, that was what it looked like to me when all of the issues were coming up. And I even advocated that we ought to be very original in our own approach to issues. And the way the protest was put together by the protesters and all of that, possibly, of course, got the attention of the government, but may have denied them the huge opportunity of what protest is all about at the end of the day. Gets you to the negotiating table, and you're able to face with the government and have negotiation, such protests, which is called, which is like, street demonstration and all that, should give you leverage when you get onto the negotiation table. Unfortunately, these people appear to be faceless, and they have missed out on the opportunity that this protest offers them, which is to come to the round table. And it's not just them making demands and government just responding to the best of government's understanding of their demand. There should be that opportunity for them to come to the round table and negotiate things, give and take, and come up with what is best as their own, as what they consider to be the reason why they came out for the protest. But no doubt about that, there is that economic hardship in the country, which everybody, kind of sign on to. There are those that are just hungry about the general political arrangements in the country, which they look for any avenue to just ventilate and put their case forward. So in the mix of all of that, we have to be realistic that governments today, in all fairness, because this is not being partisan, this government has been, working, doing what they can. And I'm not saying what they do is perfect or it's one policy fix all, but they are there responding to issues. And you can see the number of how the coordinating minister has been engaging across board, and how Mr. President too has come on board as well to tell them what they're doing. So again, you'll find out that all of the things government point out or put forward to respond to the protesters are things that are already in the works. That tells you this government is working. We can continue to make demands to get the best we can get out of them, but I'm comfortable that this government is working.
I don't know, David, a lot of people are saying, just as you said a while ago, that more than possibly the protests looking like copycats, that Nigerians had bottled up a lot of hardship. And even before any protests broke out anywhere, there had been reports of the possibility of people really losing their minds to the extent of going on the streets and talking to government. But if you want to really assess the entirety of the process, the entire exercise, would you say it was worth it?
Well, it should be worth it at the end of the day, because it brought out the concern of the people in a stronger way to the government. And for on the government side, I think the issue the government needs to revisit is basically look at how we arrive at this point. How did we get here? Is that the government assessed the policy issue space from outside when they were campaigning and doing preparations to get into government. And when they got in, they took on the big issues. And the big issues were the subsidy removal on fuel and that of the exchange rate, the floating of Naira. So these are two bulls that were released to a bull fighter in one bullfighting space. And if you are familiar with bullfighting, you don't see two bulls coming out at the same time for a bullfighter to deal with. So, and I think this is what this government has faced. And in the context of that, governments must find out how to balance these two bulls and manage them in such a way that they would not, exhaust the bullfighters' capacity, which is the government itself, and at the same time throw the whole economy in crisis. So, and I think that is what is going on with all of the initiatives of government. Talk about the student loan, talk about the pressure to make food available in the market, talk about efforts to shore up the availability of dollar in the market, to stabilize the Naira rate, which informed the proposed $500 billion Euro bond, $1 million Euro bond, and all of that. So all of these things put together, it's obvious that governments need to kind of look at the way they get the policy forward, how much of buy-in of the people in terms of communication have they put into all of these things. Yes. In fact, the semantics around the semantics around subsidy removal may have created more problem than the subsidy itself. Because subsidy, in a sense, is a constant measure which government use to stabilize whatever sector that is required to be supported. But when you come and you just say, I remove subsidy, that tells the people that you are removing something that is there for them. Whereas it should be appropriation and reappropriation, because at the end of the day, it's about spending money. Fantastic. You have taken this money from fuel importation subsidy to support agriculture. If we have communicated that in a way that people understand and took in, hopefully we won't have this much problem.
I liked the dimension you brought to the conversation, where you also talked about the fact that the removal of fuel subsidy has caused more problem than subsidy itself, because it was haphazardly done. But then my concern now is the fact that the protest held, there were concerns that were raised by protesters, but you did say that the protesters were faceless, and I think some quarters would argue with you on that, because there are some individuals that were, interfacing with the federal government on the protest. But my concern is this: how do you think government can indeed? They said they've opened their hands to dialogue. How do you think government can initiate and move about this whole dialoguing with Nigerians and ensure that we get results?
Well, thank you. I think, to be honest, the government has started that process already. And the process is for all the responsible public office holders that are concerned with the key areas of demands to come out. And now I'm telling the people exactly, explaining to them what the policy of the government is and how they are approaching the implementation and the strategy they are putting at it to make sure that the people can feel the effect of it. If they have to wait a bit to get it, they need to communicate that to that so that expectations can be managed. And I think I have listened, to the Honorable Minister for Finance and the coordinating minister, doing that. And we've seen Minister of Information going to, platforms like this to tell Nigerians what they are doing. And we've seen governors coming up on as well, because there's been a lot of focus now on governors and local government. But the governors are coming up now, and they are saying what they are doing with the allocation, improved allocations they get in over a short period of time now. So that dialogue must continue, but it must be factual and it must be basic enough for people to understand. So with that, we'll vote. That's the government, and the government will be managing expectation, and we hopefully can take it forward from that.
Moving forward, in a democracy where the citizens' voices should count, some would argue that Nigeria is part of that country, among the countries, fairly so, where people's voices do count. But is that what you see at the moment? Are the people's voices counting under this administration? That's one. Then two, how did you perceive the manner in which the administration of President Bola Tinubu handled the last protests?
Well, I think the government of President Bola Tinubu is appearing to know what civil governance is all about. They have not shied away from coming out to engage with the people, even when it's not convenient, and the people too are confident to come out and express themselves. And for me, that is the big takeaway from this protest. Once we can continue to exchange, dialogue and all that, we are hopefully likely to move forward. On the protesters, some of them are coming out, but right from the beginning, they ought to have made themselves known enough and attach themselves to the demands. And with that, maybe we would not even have gotten to a point where we have to call people to the street and we lose 20. We've lost 20 Nigerians by Amnesty International record. that we cannot get back, because I'm always concerned about what a life of Nigerian is worth. Those 20 people, we can't just close our eyes to us that they didn't happen. Some people must take responsibility for their lives. Some people call them out. So if you have to look at why you call them out, in the first instance, have you exhausted all avenues before you take people to the streets? Those are questions I would like our, people that organize protests to always put at their mind. If you remember on this show, I mentioned that this protest date may be death sentence for some people then before they started. And it has actually happened. So these 20 people, who takes responsibility for them over and above whatever we are asking for from government? So those are things I want our protesters to take note going forward into negotiating with government. Protest has layers. The last of it all is when you call people out to protest. And the reason for that is because of the risk involved in calling people out to streets. Life and livelihood are always at stake. And that has crystallized in this case, and we cannot just move forward. Somebody should account for the lives of these people.
All right. Okay, David.
And that's one important part I want us to note.
All right.